All right, now we are recording. All right. Hello, Tansi, and welcome to the fifth episode. My goodness, it's the fifth episode already. I am honored to be joined by Joyce Roberts. She is a full-time beader and artisan, and for those of you who are watching from the comfort of your home or wherever you are, from whichever device, I'd like to say a welcome to our returning viewers and listeners, and also welcome to those who are new. All right, the first question I have for Joyce is, who is Joyce Roberts? And explain to us, the audience, who she is in your own words.
Okay, thank you for having me, Stella. My name is Joyce Roberts, and I live in Fairbanks, Alaska. I am originally from Eagle, Alaska. I was born to Angela Harper and Arthur Harper. My dad he was from a small village along the middle part of the Yukon River Rampart. And my mom is more towards the east by the Canadian border. And I'm the last child of three born to them. I have two older brothers, and I was married. I am a widow. I have four children I raised with my husband, and his name was Mickey Roberts. He was from another small village, Chalkitsik, Alaska. It's real close to Yukon, Alaska. And we had been married we were together 23 years, but we were married 19 years. And we had four children. We had two boys, two girls. They're 26, 23, 18, and 13. And I was raised by my mom. My father was born in 1913, and so he was quite a bit older when I came onto the scene. I was born in 1978, and my dad was pretty close to retirement age around that time. My mom was 38 years old, I believe, and my father had colon cancer around, I think I was 11. As soon as they told me that he had it, shortly after he passed away, about 2 months later. So from the age of 11 on, my mom raised me along with my brothers, but they were older. My brothers are 12 and 13 years older than I am. So I was the baby. But when I was young, I remember when I was 5, my mom wanted to teach me how to sew because I was just pestering her, and I want to make something pretty, and and I seen all her pretty beads, and I was like, I know how to do this. I can do it. And so she put me in front of the dinner table and put some beads in front of me, and she let me sew some beads down, and I don't know what I was making, but I just wanted to do the same motions that she was doing.
Yeah.
And from that time on, I kind of like caught on to how to do beading, and sporadically from that age 5 till I don't know, till I was about 28 years old, I would dabble a little bit with beading. But for the most part, when I became an adult, I knew my husband from around that same age, around 5, but I didn't see him again till I was 11. And then I found him again when I was 18, and we had spent a whole summer together. And the following year, we spent another summer together. And I kind of felt like in my heart that this is who I want to spend my life with. And he felt the same way. And we had talked about getting married, and we didn't actually get married until we were 21 years old. And that was at 21 is when we had our first baby together, my oldest daughter, Artisha. And we got married in the summer of 2000 in Eagle. There was a historic church in the old village of Eagle. We were the last ones to get married in there. And from then on, we just worked really hard. I didn't really have time back then to do beading, with raising kids and trying to hold a job. And I also went to college full time, and that I felt like I was never gonna see the light at the end of the tunnel, because small children, working full time and college full time for 2 years in a row. I even went to summer sessions because I really wanted to get my degree in human services as quickly as I possibly could. So I worked day and night, and I did get an opportunity to work in a recovery center prior to my last year of college, and I could have graduated, but I just didn't want to pass up this opportunity, so I took the job. And from then on, I just worked a lot of office jobs, and all the way up until age 40, 42 or 43. And then for the last 4 or 5 years, I've just been doing beading full time. I did have a tragedy happen, several tragedies happen in my time here. My husband was killed trying to stop a fight between these two people in 2019. In fact, September 28th is going to be 6 years since my husband passed away. But we lost him, and it was really, really hard for me, because for my entire adult life, he was all I had. And we were always together. We were always we made a pact to raise our kids better than we were raised ourselves, because me and him had come from alcoholic families, and just really tough upbringings, where there was a lot of violence and drinking and drugs, and just a lot of bad things. Like I felt, and I had a conversation with my daughter not too long ago, maybe a few days ago, and I had told her about my upbringing with my mom, who was an alcoholic, how I just really looked forward to turning 18 because I wanted to get out and be on my own. And I told her that it was so bad. I really wanted to just run away and just get started on life early and try to make it on my own. But each time I got out there, I was only able to make it a few days, and then I'd get scared, and then I'd go back home. And I asked my daughter, I said, do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like that I am so horrible or I make things difficult for you that you want to run away from home or you just want to get out of here? And she looked at me and she goes, no. Which I was so relieved because I thought, oh my gosh, if I asked myself at her age, at the age of 18, the same question, do I make it difficult or do you feel like you want to run away and live on your own? Me at 18, I know I would have answered very differently. I was just unsatisfied with how home life was back then. So when me and my husband got together, we made a pact to raise our kids differently. We would try to minimize the amount of bad incidents happening in their lives. We knew that bad things they're going to be exposed to, but we wanted to have them be raised in a healthy setting with two parents. And I wanted to be a sober parent and be able to meet all their needs and teach them things. And I felt like it was going that way, but we did struggle. Like my husband did struggle with alcoholism, and it really divided us quite a bit on many occasions. So when my husband passed away, I fell into a very deep depression, and I never used to drink. I used to just like have a drink on a Friday or a Saturday, but after my husband passed away, I really did fall deeply into it, and I was drinking about 4 or 5 times a week. And I kept trying to go to counseling, but it didn't feel like it was working for me because I just felt like every time I went to a counseling session, I left as an open wound, you know? I didn't feel like I was getting any kind of therapy or any kind of resolution to some of the things that I had anxiety about. And it was really hard. But I spent a couple more years in that situation of drinking and working and drinking and working. And I knew it wasn't gonna work the entire time. I knew that at some point I had to pull myself together and actually do what I needed to do, which was be a sober parent and continue on with the plan that I had made with my husband to raise our kids in a safe and healthy home. So in January of 2023, in the middle of the night, I had been drinking the night before, and in the middle of the night, I got up and I just cried out to God that I wanted to quit drinking. I wanted to move on and keep going forward with my kids and be there for them. So I think that's all it took, because from January 1st, 2023, I've been sober.
Well, after hearing your story, there's so many. I already came up with this to-do list or this script of what I wanted to say to sort of sound put together, but I do know that I do have parallel misfortunes. There's a lot of parallels to our story. I myself, being the daughter of a residential school survivor, who also was put through day school and the 60s scoop, I understand quite well what it is, that yearning and the wanting to be in a sober home life, whether you wanted your parents to be the ones to provide that, whether you wanted to provide that for yourself as an individual for when you become a parent in the future. So I understand that loneliness and that heartache. It's very much close to home. As I've said in a previous episode, I believe it was the third episode, I mentioned how I'm slowly getting over the pain and the hurt and the anger of being put in the situation that I didn't ask for. That being said, hearing your story, I am honored to hear your story because you have said it openly and you have said it honestly and candidly that you struggled. You admitted to struggling with alcohol. You have admitted to being in that rough situation. And I admire that of your story. I admire that of you as a person because that wasn't my biological mother, sadly. She wasn't able to fully admit, and whether or not she was aware to some point that her alcohol addiction was a problem and it was causing a lot of consequences for those around her, or whether she had any awareness at all. She still struggles with her alcohol addiction to this day. And there's a lot to be said of the emotional and the physical and the psychological aftermath, the long-term effects of what our people went through. And since Orange Shirt Day has become National Truth and Reconciliation Day, I have noticed within various mediums of the media, such as social media, or whether it's internet articles, or whether it's news channels that are posting their media, their press release on YouTube, that people are now coming forward and they are labeling what happened to us as a genocide, because yes, it is a genocide and it is a cultural genocide. I admire you for the person for taking something that happened to you, for saying, I want a sober life for my children and for myself, and for that awareness, for it being on your mind constantly, or being on your mind to where you said, I've had enough of drinking, I've had enough of this life, I want a sober life, and you went out and you did something about it. So that warms my heart, knowing that I am meeting with someone, I am speaking with someone, I am sharing a space with someone who was aware within their life to say, you know what? I'm going to let the bottle go. I'm going to leave that past life. I'm going to leave that part of my life and all of the consequences of that life. I'm going to leave it, and I am going to work on myself. And you didn't just say it, you put in the effort, and there was a lot that came out of it. There was a lot of good come out of it. And from what I see now, even though I don't know you as much, what I see is a comfortable woman who's comfortable with herself, but who is accepting of herself. I see a lot of self-love radiating from your face. It shows on your face. You're a person who loves herself and is proud of herself and proud of dismissing that, proud of setting it aside and saying, you know what, I'm not just going to be someone who says it, I'm going to be someone who actually puts in the effort to it. And also I wanted to congratulate you on you and your husband's 23-year marriage. That's a lot of years. From my perspective, I haven't known or heard of many people that stayed married quite as long. So you're not the first person I've heard of, but you are one of the few. So congratulations on your over 2-decade-long marriage. And I'd like to say congratulations for putting in the effort to seeking post-secondary education, to seeking that higher education. And despite all the obstacles and the hurdles, you plowed through, you pushed through. And if no one's told you, very proud of you for the effort and for what came out of it, for what you sowed into yourself. You invested in yourself, and it shows.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that note before we move on to the second question?
Yeah, I think that to get the full perspective of me, you also have to know that I don't have a very large circle of friends. I have friends, but when I was with my husband, we mostly were around my mom, my brothers, his mom, his dad, and that was really basically it. We barely had contact with like cousins and more extended family out, like aunties, uncles. When we lived in Eagle, oh, we loved living there. I loved living there. I loved being out on the land and doing things together as a family. But we moved to Fairbanks because I felt that the kids needed more exposure to extracurricular activities, which we weren't able to get where we lived in Eagle. So we moved here, and my husband's passing isn't the only tragedy that's happened. Shortly after we lost my husband, I bought a home, the home that I'm in right now. This is my beading room inside my home.
Mm-hmm.
My son had an accident. My daughter was dating a guy that was from Eagle, and they were here. And this was when I was still deep into my alcoholism. He, my son and Brian, my daughter's boyfriend, they were here, and we had been drinking. We went out to visit friends. We came home. I came home up to my room. I went to sleep. In the middle of the night, an accident happened where Brian was trying to teach my son how to defend himself. If you ever got in a situation where somebody was pointing a gun at him, he was trying to show my son how to take a gun away from somebody. And the gun went off, and Brian was killed. And my son went to jail. My son's been in jail for about 4 years now, and he was only 19 when it happened. And then shortly after that, I lost my my father-in-law, he had gotten sick with pneumonia, and I'm not sure if it was due to COVID. I know COVID was around at that time. And then about 2 or 3 months after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law passed away. And all these losses happening around me and to our family, it just really devastated me and caused me to like be drinking at least 5 times a week. And I knew that I was just hurting myself more and more. And if I just couldn't get a hold of myself and pull myself together, I was probably going to be next. And so my mom also passed away. But it wasn't due to COVID. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer about 2 years ago. And on October 24th, I think it'll be 2 years since I lost my mom. So right now I have both of my brothers and 2 of my younger children with me, and my significant other. And that's all the people that I have in my circle, you know. I do have friends that, and I do want to say that without how could I say it? I have the greatest friends on planet Earth, because in my in this living hell that I was living in, people had reached out to me. And right about the time that my mom was about ready to pass away, I had come to terms with myself and decided that the matriarch of our family is leaving. That I'm the only daughter she has left, and I feel like that I have to take over the role of the matriarch because there's no one else. And so there again too, I made the decision I was going to sober up and carry on traditions that we had in our family, but I was going to do it sober. So my mom passed away October 24th, and then that was the time that I decided that I had to quit drinking. So 2 months later, on January 1st is when I quit. And yeah, she really was the glue that kept us all together. I still do things that we normally do when she was alive, such as family gatherings and birthdays. I celebrate anything that she would have celebrated. And yeah, I just try to keep things as normal as I possibly can, as if she was still here, but also bring my own flair with it.
Yeah. It From listening to your story, and I wanted to make sure I was listening to your story carefully so that I knew what would be the next thing to say in response to you sharing your story. And I wanted to thank you for your vulnerability, and thank you for being comfortable, for feeling comfortable to share your story, because it is not easy sharing our story. I, from personal experience, know that it is not an easy feat. Sometimes you clam up and you have clammy hands, sweaty palms, or sometimes it feels that there is a pressure on your throat and you're swallowing something real large. that being said, in the context of this podcast being about storytelling, I want storytelling to show the different walks of life and to display that behind the Indigenous professionals, whether it is a mental health therapist or an artisan such as yourself, or a leader in a leadership role, we come from various backgrounds and we come with our own set of quirks and our own set of obstacles, our own set of hurdles. And that doesn't make us any less human being. That doesn't make us any less the people who we are or the person of which we are. And aside from drawing parallels to your life and saying that I understand, when in fact I don't really truly understand, because I can provide sympathy, and I can extend out my sympathies and my heart out to you, but that doesn't mean I understand. But I do understand the feeling of loneliness and the feeling that we are responsible for the actions of others, or we're responsible for others' choices, for the actions that they take. And because we're so close knit with those, whether it is our families by birth or whether it's our close friends who are like family, it's sometimes a challenge, and it's sometimes a loss for us as the people who we are, as the person trying to figure out, what do I like, what don't I like, what are my interests, what are my hobbies, who am I as a person, what am I like as a person, as a friend, as a daughter, as a cousin, as a niece, or as an aunt. And again, thank you for feeling comfortable with sharing your story. It's all I can say is I've been there, where you get the feeling that it's next to impossible or it's uncomfortable sharing your story. And aside from that, I do want to say that being two people who come from alcoholic backgrounds, what was the point? And you have said that there were several tragedies that happened within your life and within your family and those close to you that made you want to quit, your journey with alcohol. But was there a point in time where you decided not only to stop, but you decided, okay, I have a plan? Did you even have a plan as to what you would do once you stopped, or was it just following the way of the current?
Well, before my husband had passed away, in fact, I was looking at my Facebook memories, and about 9 years ago, I taught myself how to make moccasins.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a beader and a basket maker, and I remember when I lived in Eagle, there was a lady that lived there, and she used to make these beautiful dancing boots. And I knew it took a lot of work, and I was like, man, someday I'm gonna have a pair just like that. Or someday I'm gonna learn how to do stuff like that. And when I was looking at my Facebook memories, I seen photos that I had posted about me finishing a pair of moccasins that I couldn't believe that I made. And I was like, wow, that was 9 years ago. And that was just moccasins. That was not the tall boots that I taught myself how to make afterwards. But yeah, I think before my husband died, I was getting really good at doing beadwork and making these beautiful pieces. And somebody had told me about the Attica Festival. I heard about that, I think, for the first time in 2017 or 2018. And I really wanted to go to that and really be around all the creativity that everyone has to share at the Attica Festival. But I wasn't able to, there was, the getting across the border, finding childcare, finding time off from work. But, I continued to press on, and my husband was very supportive of my beadwork and all my crazy ideas of all these different projects I wanted to do. He would, purchase everything that I needed for it, and just real supportive. And but after he passed away, I did put away my beadwork for over a year, and I think I went through a mourning period of that too, because not only had I lost my husband, but I lost the creative drive to continue making beautiful works of art. And that, on top of not having my husband around, just compacted my grief. And I think about a year and a half after he had passed, I came in here. I came into my beading room, and not to bead, but just to, touch my beads and all my stuff and organize it. And I think in my mind, I was trying to prepare myself to try to get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I just decided that I think I'll make something. And I think my first project after being away from beading so long was a beaded shawl, kind of like this one back here.
Mm-hmm.
I made one of those, and I felt like, and that was a huge accomplishment because of my absence away from beading. I felt like, it's like riding a bike. And
Yes.
so when I tried it, I was like, oh, I can do it. Oh my gosh, I still got it. Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier during this episode, I see the pride, the self-pride and the self-love. It's written all over your face, even if you don't believe it 100%, even if you believe it only 20% or 35%, still believing in yourself, even not fully 100% or not completely, even believing in yourself for a short time or for a short amount, it really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Being proud in yourself and being the person who you can lean on and being the person who you can rely on, the person who you can turn to. There's nothing like it in the world. And I must say, I have friends as well, but they're not like the friends we see in the movies or we see on TikTok that are hand in hand and that are with us, practically attached to the hip, or that are with us every second of the day. But some human connection, it does help. Some friendships are there meant to last throughout the thick and the thin, and some friendships are a life lesson. They were a short lesson to us, and for us to take something away, for us to take with us moving forward. Okay, this is what I learned, and this is who I've become, or this is who I was during and throughout this friendship, even if it was short-term or even long-term friendships, different friendships, and the way you behave and the way you carry yourself within each relationship with each friend, it gives you a level of self-awareness for yourself, and it gives you the aha moments. Am I a kind person? Am I a generous person? Am I easy to laugh with? Am I easy to make friends with? And finding out the answers to those questions, it's like building blocks to ourselves, and building blocks to the person, and to the self-identity, and to who we are as human beings, but also who we are as friends, who we are as, as nurturers, as caregivers, as kind. Are we kind? Are we tolerant? What are our boundaries? What are our faults? And what is something we can improve and work on and build upon and go from there? So I don't even know how to put this into words, but the feeling of self-identity and the feeling of going throughout challenges and hurdles and going through whatever life throws at us and coming out, even when we, like I said, even if we only believe in ourselves 20% or 35%, we are still there for ourselves at the end of the day. We didn't give up on the fight. Yes, we took a pause, and yes, we stayed down. We stood rested for however long, but coming back and coming out of that, out of those hurdles and out of those challenges, and coming up with a new perspective and coming out with a renewed hope, with a renewed lease on life. For example, you yourself, Joyce Roberts, facing the tragedies you did, you quit your relationship with alcohol and you set that aside and you agreed on a sober life, and then you gradually, went around and you got comfortable with your materials. You got comfortable with your beads, with the tools. You got comfortable with feeling, with how does it make you feel? Does it still bring you joy? And then eventually you went back to returning to beading and to being a full-time artist. With that being said, I came across your TikTok account a while ago, and that's how I came up with the idea that it would be wonderful. It would be a nice treat for myself as a host, and for the audience, for the viewers, and for the listeners, if we had a guest who was a full-time beader and who understood and was comfortable and knew how it felt being an artist, beading, because I would assume, I haven't beaded myself. I haven't touched beading or moccasins or patterns myself, but I would assume it's time constraint, because you're dealing with small beads and you're dealing with a small needle and you're dealing with intricate designs, whether that's flowers or whether that's birds or that's eagles or that's bears or that's a bear print, just to name a few patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came across your TikTok account, I thought, I would love for this young woman, for this young lady to join me and to walk me through what is it that led you to being a full-time beader. What was it that was your driving inspiration to say, I'm going to be a full-time beader and I'm going to bring my artistry to local communities, within local Indigenous communities? And this is something that I'm going to do to keep me well occupied, keep me well, yeah, I'd say well occupied, or to as a career choice is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess I could say that I didn't choose to become a full-time beater, even though that really was my dream. I did enjoy working in the office setting where, with the people that I worked with. I worked for a tribal organization for, I don't know, I think maybe about 16 years. And I hopped around within the company a few times, but my last position with them, I really enjoyed it. And I really did make a lot of connections, which helped me once I did go full time with beading. The thing with becoming a full time beader was I was just going to be a stay at home mom because I felt like if I have this opportunity to stay home with them, I'm going to take it. When my husband passed, I got a life insurance policy payment from where he used to work. He used to work on the slope. And so I was able to take that and buy us a house and have money left over to be able to care for them for a little bit, to stay at home and not have to worry for a while. And then when I decided to quit alcohol, and I was getting back into beading, I share a lot of my beadwork on Facebook, on TikTok, and the whole process. And one of my friends had seen all my posts and asked me if I would mind coming down to a village down the Yukon to teach some kids caribou tufting. And I thought, oh yeah, that sounds all right. I think I could do it. So I did have to source some caribou fur, and I had to dye it. I had to get all the supplies ready for doing my first teaching job down in Nulato. And when I did it, I felt a lot of enjoyment from it because I got to teach kids something that I knew a lot about, and give them something that's a traditional activity and know that they can carry it on and teach their friends if they felt like it. And so once I got through with that teaching job, many more came after that. And it felt like this abundance of love came towards me, because when I had pleaded out to God to help save me, I didn't know that all these blessings were going to start coming in. And being a teacher of a cultural educator, I didn't know that was going to be a part of the package deal, along with being sober and traveling, teaching, just living out my dream. Really, I've been to so many places. I've gone to Canada. I actually got to go to the Attica festival that I had dreamed about going to just, envelop myself in with all the creativity of all those artists that gather there every year. I made a lot of friends there. I sold my art, and not only did I get the teaching jobs, but my artistry was starting to really take off. Like I I really strive to make my art very real, to look very real. And it was beginning to take shape, like my animals were becoming more lifelike, and a lot of people on my pages were beginning to take notice, and I was just like taking off in, for the stars, so to speak. And I don't know, my I take pictures of everything. I've blown them up. I keep them in a binder, and I just look at it from time to time like, wow, I can't believe I made that. And it was so hard, and I almost cried, and I almost stopped because it was so frustrating, but I powered through. And yeah, it's really satisfying to me, the artwork and the challenges that come with it. And the only thing that I'm a little bit dismayed by is that it takes a really long time for me to get these pieces done. And I just want to, I want to finish something, and I want to start something else, because I've got all these ideas, and I can't work fast enough.
Well, I can hear the joy in
Mhm.
your voice as you're describing your journey and the goodness and the blessings that you have received, and the feeling of teaching others and sharing with others the knowledge and the experience of how to do beading or how to do various arts and crafts. So, if it wasn't your idea to be a full-time beader, how did it come to be? I'm assuming you already said, but I was so starstruck by hearing you share your story that I probably must have forgotten where along the way that you had stated your journey, or the the main point, or the main fork in your life that led you to being a full-time beater.
Let's see. The last time I had an office job was 4 years ago, and then I would bead after work. I would bead on the weekends. It took up a lot of my time, and I really wish that I could just go full time and not have to worry. And I thought, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to stop working, because that doesn't bring me joy anymore. And these do. These beads bring me joy. Yeah, so it was about 4 years ago, I quit my job, and I just went full time with beading, and it has paid off. I've made many. I mean, a lot of people tell me a lot of my stuff should be in museums, and I will say that once you've stared at a beaded piece for weeks, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like, oh gosh, I'm so glad this is done.
Yes. You know, I'm not sure how to put this or how I would say this. It would be, I would presume, would it feel rewarding having your piece in museum? For me personally, having our artifacts, Indigenous artifacts, even the ones from historic times, it almost feels as if they are there not to share the history. I mean, that is the intended purpose, is to share the history and to share the visuals of these artifacts were used during these times, and this is what we know about these artifacts. But to me, I would personally say that I would rather see local artists share their beadwork with community members, with people, with giving them out, or with teaching them how to make a set of beaded earrings. And then once that's done, the students, the peers, they can take it home with them, as opposed to having it in a museum. Because in a museum, it would just sit there and collect dust, and we wouldn't know if there would be any true or any real authentic value with displaying it and showcasing it in a museum. Not unless, of course, I'm wrong and there is another alternative purpose to having a piece shown. Maybe if it was in a short-term exhibit or a temporary exhibit, then it's there, and you were a speaker, you were a guest speaker, and you were standing alongside your pieces. But I don't know, how would you feel of having your pieces in a museum?
I've thought about that before, and I think I kind of share the same sentiments as you. Like, I don't know if I would really have any enjoyment or excitement of having my work just sitting in a place where it collects dust. And I do make sure that my pieces, when they do go out, it's like to our area. And I do have pieces in Canada that there are people, I have sent them dancing boots. I know I've got like 2 pairs that are in Canada, in the Yukon and in BC, but the rest of mine, I think I've made at least over a dozen dancing boots. It takes so long to make those, and that's the thing that has brought me a lot of recognition in Alaska and Canada, is that I can make dancing boots. And I want to teach people how to do that. And I did try to start it last year. We went about 2 or 3 months. We had a meeting once a month, and but once people start to see all the work that goes into it, it's like they want to commit, but the intricacies of how much beadwork they want to put into their work is kind of daunting to them. And then it just kind of waned down to where they just put it away, or like, I would reach out, and I thought, okay, well, if this many people are saying they don't have time, well, maybe we'll just pause here and try to do it again next year at the same time. And but yeah, dancing boots I've been pretty well known for making them. I was scrolling through TikTok one night, and somebody on my friends list, I heard my name, and I stopped scrolling, and I watched the TikTok live, and they named a couple other women that I know that do dancing boots, and I was like, hey, I heard my name. And I just sat and listened for a while, and I was like, oh, it just still kind of amazes me that I can do that kind of thing. It takes a real long time, a lot of persistence and dedication and patience to create beautiful works of art like that. And my aim is to make something that I would like, that I would purchase. And a lot of times I hit the mark, of attractiveness of the beadwork, and people just like are drawn to it. And in fact, right now, not only is it just dancing boots, I've done men's vests, these shawls, earrings. I do a lot of other things that, a lot of people request me to make pieces for them. I have a tall order right now. I have to make a pair of dancing boots, 3 vests, 4 vests.
Oh goodness.
I just finished traveling like a week and a half ago, so I just got started on some pieces, and yeah, it's really fun, and it's really exciting to be, up there where, people work really hard to, and because I guess I'm having trouble articulating what the amount of work that I do, and my inspiration for it. I used to look at Pinterest and see all this beautiful work by like Heather Dixon and Kaylin Baker and some other artists in the Yukon and in Alaska, in my area, and just really wish that I could make pieces like that, and make some really beautiful works of art. And I knew it took a lot of time to it does. In fact, today it took me all day to draw this out, and this is just for
Oh wow.
slipper tops.
Very
And
detailed.
yeah, drafting that out,
Oh.
people don't know that it takes time to draft out what ideas that you're gonna give to them to choose from. And because every piece that I make is unique, and it'll never be recreated ever again.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing, it takes time and attention to detail to come up with the patterns, to come up with drafting. And I assume you create the patterns yourself. You create the templates.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
And it's a very well-known fact that in some of our beading communities, that not a lot of people are willing to share patterns. And I know for years I tried to track down a pattern for dancing boots, and especially this piece right here. This is the piece that goes around your calf.
Okay.
And I wanted just this piece because I thought if I could get this piece, I can figure out the rest of how to do the wraparound piece around your calf. And I could not get anybody to share their pattern pieces with me. And so I just took it upon myself to create one on my own. And I did, and it turned out fine. It was perfect.
Well, I am glad that your hard work paid off, and I'm glad your persistence to obtain these patterns or these designs, these templates, I'm glad it paid off for you. I did have a short question before we moved on to our third question of the episode. Is there a way, and I'm just curious as an Indigenous person myself, as a First Nations woman myself, who's curious about how it works in terms of receiving commission for your artwork, for your beadwork. Is there a point in time, or is there sort of a balance? Because from my understanding, before colonialism came to Canada and before we began using paper money and coins and all of this physical currency, and now we're into the digital currency, we did trading wars. So not trading wars. We did trade agreements between intertribal within Canada. I'm wondering, does that still play a part? For example, if you were to make a vest and you were to trade it with another artist that happened to make a pair of moccasins or that made a fur coat. Is there that exchange still happening within specific or certain communities?
Yes. In fact, I have made a lot of good trades. I went to Old Crow last year, and I was working on a beaded piece of it was for a pair of boots, and I had beaded a black silhouette of a moose with colorful leaves or colorful flowers going up both sides of it, and the I think she was the chief, wanted to pay me to buy it once it was finished, because I was pretty close to finishing it, and I was like, I really don't like selling my stuff, and I said, but I would be open to a trade if you have any moose skin. And she had moose skin. And that's what that's what I really love, is getting authentic, traditional home tan smoked moose hide. And she had that. So I told her that I'll finish this, and if you want to trade me a piece of moose hide. And she gave me a very substantial piece of hide, and I was satisfied with the amount, and she was satisfied with the beadwork. And but that's just one instance. I've done many trades. I would rather work in trading beadwork for something that I would need. I've traded beadwork for moose meat, for caribou meat, for help, for if I needed some kind of help for something, whether it be for my car, for my house. I've done trades, and I get really excited about it when I find somebody that's willing to do a trade with me. It's fun.
Yes. For the longest time growing up and being in that sense of yearning for something outside of the dysfunctional family unit, I did dream of what my life would be. And this was before I even had the idea to start this podcast, before I had the idea of being an entrepreneur and a businesswoman and, working how many hours for myself without getting any pay. I did think, and I still have the dream, is I'd like to return back to the land. I'd like to either live on reserve. I'm from Little Pine Reserve, the Saskatchewan province. Or I'd like to explore my options within Canada, if I would be able to live close to a nearby community, Indigenous community, like maybe out west in Vancouver, out east in Ontario, or up north in the territories. But that is still my dream, is to someday, one day, hopefully within the near future, within the next, I'd say 10, 12 to 15 years, I'd like to have a small acreage, and I'd like to have that, the trading of services and for items, for handmade pieces. Like if I had this acreage and, I began experimenting with baking loaves of bread or loaves of bannock or bundles of bannock, that then I can take that and trade it with neighbors and with local community members. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fun too. I used to do a lot of baking, and when you live out in the bush and you don't have, say for instance, I didn't have barbecue sauce one time, and I looked up online how to make your own, and I had all the ingredients to make it, I made my own barbecue sauce, and I didn't know a lot of the stuff that went into it. Like brown sugar, I was like, oh my gosh, tomatoes. Yeah, so to be resourceful, and I taught
Yes.
myself how to can. I I made jelly. I learned how to work on a chainsaw. All the stuff that you need to know to live out in the bush. I
Mm-hmm.
researched it all just so in case someday that the internet went down, or something happened,
Yes.
we need to be able to know how to do things on our own. So, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still like that. I still look things up, and I thank God for TikTok, because I've learned so much of like cooking, car repair, childcare, doing taxes, home repair, DIY, everything. I've
Mm-hmm.
looked it up and taught myself a lot of things.
Wow. I do want to I do want to make mention. Sorry, there's just this by my foot that's annoying me. Whatever that was, a chain or a belt or whatever piece. Um, being in the city, it's not a huge city, and it's not a small city either. It's sort of a medium-sized city. I'd say, about as big as Banff, I'd say. Um, from posting on Facebook Marketplace, I remember an instance, and I can't remember what the item or the object was, but I posted it for sale or for trade, and I didn't get any bites for that item. And so after that, I gave up the idea of being an open recipient to trading. But that is something that I find is proven to be more useful, because as you said, what if the internet goes down, or what if these sci-fi films like The Terminator or The Walking Dead, what if these TV shows or these movies becomes reality? What are then we going to do? There's going to be significant decrease in cash, in coins, in physical money, in any value that it holds, it will decrease dramatically. And that's from my understanding. I mean, I could be wrong, and, someone might shoot it in the comments later that, that's not completely true, but this is from my own perception. So, being an open recipient, or finding recipients, finding others who are willing to participate in trade, I find that is more helpful and beneficial to us. And you're right, we are more independent. We're not dependent on some said, colonialist traditions, such as today's currency and the debit cards and credit cards. We're relying and depending upon an age-old system that goes as far back as our people's time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because, as I said earlier during this episode, I am a bit of a chatterbox, and I like to talk and talk and talk, but also I want my guests to feel comfortable with, sharing as much or as little detail. That is the privilege of my guests, and I want them to, feel comfortable with whatever details or how much details they feel comfortable with sharing. Okay. So my third question is, can you share what is the downside about creating artistry workshops and bringing them into Indigenous communities?
The downside. I think the level of interest, I think. I know that
Mhm.
there is a level of interest, and it depends a lot on the communities that I visit. Some of the bigger communities, there's a lot of interest, uh, and I strive to make the activity very exciting and fun. And then there's just communities that are pretty laid back, and sometimes they have an interest in it, or sometimes they just want to visit and sew, and or just gather together and chat and be informal. And I have no problem with that, but I also want to be able to teach and to show somebody these uh, traditional activities. And
Mhm.
but that level of interest is one of the downsides. And then I think when sometimes I have a hard time sourcing some of the materials that I need to take to these places to teach, and it's it's a struggle for me to try to whip stuff up and
Yeah.
pull things out of the air and make it into something. But I get by pretty good, and I usually try to be proactive and have my supplies ready. And that could be, I've gone to places where I actually forgot to bring uh, some important tools, or one of the things that we really need. And um, that's, yeah, I have a after I did my first couple of teaching jobs, I kind of had it down pat of what I needed to bring and how my style of teaching, because I've taught little kindergartners all the way up to senior citizens.
Mhm.
And um, a lot of times it's really difficult to get smaller children to sit still to learn
Mhm.
the activity. And um, that can be a little daunting too. So I try to work with them as much as I can, but I know they're just like
Mhm.
anxious to like get away and go play. And a lot of times it's the kids that are around junior high and high school that are more into it. And I really appreciate them, the kids that are into their culture and want to learn these things, and they want to pass it down to, their family and later on their children. And uh, yeah, I think it's just level of interest and the age range that I work with. I have no problems working with adults. I mean, you're an adult. If you're interested, you're interested. If not, you're
Mhm.
not. And it's a little bit costly too, um, it just to get materials, and then it's costly in the sense that I have to get out to the community. I have a fee, and then sometimes I'll get stuck out there. I'll have to stay an extra day. That's added costs. But usually everything works out pretty good.
Oh, well, I'm glad for that. I'm glad that you're able to adapt and to improvise and to work with the cards or to work with the situation that you are dished out. Um, and it also sounds to me that, you know, one of the great things about beading and sharing and storytelling and bringing the experience to community individuals is can also be the downside, the lack of interest or the interest, but it's not the same interest to which you expect. It's the interest, it's a different interest. Maybe they just want to sit around and they just want to bead with you and they just want to have company, whereas you'd really want to teach people and you would want to share your experience and your knowledge. So with that being said, we'll move on to our fourth question, which talks about reconciliation. What are the important steps of reconciliation, and how can we take those steps towards reconciliation?
I seen this question in your email, and I was just thinking about it, and like, I think my opinion would be that I don't think it can happen without first understanding the depth and the impact of historical and ongoing harms. And we have to work to educate our kids and give them true and accurate account of events that have happened, which led us to where we are today. And so that they can understand that, we're not just doing this to do it. There's a reason behind it, and we need to learn from that to move forward. And I think in order to move forward, we just got to acknowledge that there was bad stuff that happened. We're bringing it to light, and we're going to move forward with everybody knowing what had happened and how we're trying to support our people that were affected by it, and also amplify their voices and to educate people about it so that we can, live in harmony.
Does being a full-time beader and teaching others, how to bead or how to take patterns, whether it's your patterns or their own patterns, and to make their beaded artworks, is that one of the important steps towards reconciliation?
I believe so. I believe it has a place in there. My family on my mother's side are all artistic in their own way, and they had learned from somebody in their youth, from an ancestor that passed it on to them. So I do believe that, patterns that we get from our mothers, our aunts, our uncles are, they're historical and they're important, and they need to be shared with others. And I do think they have an importance in reconciliation.
Yes. And I do believe it's also it's a way to invite our Indigenous brothers and sisters, as well as non-Indigenous folks, to to learn, being that beading or any form of Indigenous artistry, teaching and showing, even if they're just commentators and they're just there to watch. I do believe that it plays a role within reconciliation, because the interest towards our art and to what we do as artisans, as we do as artists, they're not only learning how we make, say, our moccasins and our lanyards and our flaps for the fronts of the moccasins, but it's also showing a taste of our culture. It's showing an example of our culture, showing that, this is what's important to us, and this is what we value, and this is what brings us joy.
Right. Yeah, we have to definitely protect our cultural resources.
Mm-hmm. And with that being said, we are moving on to our last and final question. And before we get started with that question, I wanted again to say thank you. And I believe the Cree term for thank you very much is miigwech. So miigwech, Joyce, for joining me this evening. The fifth question is, what is your one piece of advice for today's viewers and listeners?
I think my advice would be to be patient and to be kind, because no matter what you're going through, you're always going to come out the other side, and you're going to be able to share your story, and somebody is going to benefit from your struggles and take what they can from your story and use that as a torch to light their way when they're going through the same struggles as you did.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And I wanted to also add, if I may, to your advice and to expand the advice, and which is have faith in yourself and trust in yourself, because at the end of the day, you've got yourself to make proud, and you've got yourself to live with, and to get you where you need to go and to get you further and beyond. So thank you, Joyce, and I hope you have a beautiful evening.
Okay, thank you, Stella.
All right, good night.
Good night.